Thanks for your presentations, and I'm sorry I was late and missed the introductions of two of them. I just want to ask a question of Enterprise Ireland, because in your statement you say there's been a trend whereby exports to the UK as a proportion of our total client exports has been declining from 2005 at 45% to 37% in 2015. So that decline has been happening, and really what I'd like to try and tease out, not just with yourself but with all of you, is are we witnessing a bit of a Brexit panic happening at the moment? Because all that really has happened is that the vote was had, and then after Theresa May's speech, the currency speculators created uncertainty, but even in your own statement you call that short-term volatility in the market. The devaluation of sterling can go up and down depending on the outcome, obviously, of discussions, talks, agreements that may happen when when we sit down to really work out the detail. But obviously there's been a decline that was taking place anyway in terms of the trade between Britain and Ireland. And I notice in your statement too, you're talking about reorientating towards North America, Canada, Asia and the Middle East. I would like you to comment on what you think will be the impact of CETA on all of your ambitions, the comprehensive economic trade agreement with Canada, which is to be first stages of it signed next week with the European Commission, and what you think the impact of that will be and how that might offset any kind of negative impact for Brexit in the Republic of Ireland. On the Intertrade Ireland presentation here, it's interesting to see that 1/3 of all external sales of small companies from the north come south, and over 62% of Northern Ireland's total sales to the EU are to Ireland. So clearly the market in the Republic of Ireland is very important to the economy in Northern Ireland, but given all the sensitivities and in absence of any discussions happening, do you see that there will be a way around doing specific trade deals within the island? Should a hard Brexit go ahead? And lastly, to the IDA, first of all, I'm delighted to see your figures that are actually stating a fact that we have been saying for ages, which is it isn't just tax that attracts foreign direct investment into this country. It's also the fact that there's talent and there's infrastructure. We're English speaking, we're a member of the European Union, we're members of the Eurozone, and it's a passport into the European market in general because of our location. Because every time you talk about let's try and collect the effective corporation tax of 12.5%, there's another panic. Oh, they'd all up sticks and leave. Whereas in fact you have all outlined that there are many other factors that make this economy particularly attractive for investment. But I am concerned in terms of the IDA and the type of investment that they bring in. We had a discussion at a previous committee about the quality of jobs, and I just want to know from the IDA, while you're here, it's probably separate to Brexit but related, does the IDA do any checking on the quality and types of jobs that it funds and attempts to attract in, and specifically in the financial sector? In the future, we're going to see many sort of dodgy companies, I won't mention them here because I'll probably get given out to, where the quality of jobs is actually driving down work and pay and conditions for a lot of people. The nature of companies being that they provide an app and somebody goes out as a self-employed technician and delivers a service at a very cheap rate for these global corporations. And are the IDA concerned about funding these sort of companies, which they may tick the boxes and show that we're getting jobs, but should we not be also concerned about the quality and standard of both jobs and pay that public money pays for?
Thanks, Deputy. Whichever of you want to take the questions there.
Sure. Maybe I'll take the first question, which you direct to myself, in terms of UK exports. So in terms of the UK exports, what we were saying there is if you go back to 2005, the percentage of exports, of our total exports to the UK was 45%. That was 45% at the time of a much smaller number than the 20.6 billion that we had in 2015, And the strategy very much has been focused on trying to lessen dependence on one particular market. And a good example that might be engineering and companies in engineering products. So you take engineering as an example. Is if we go back 10 years ago, engineering in Ireland was primarily an indigenous industry that was focused on the domestic market. 3 years ago, the level of exports from that sector exceeded the level of sales in the domestic market for the first time. So it is now predominantly an export-orientated market. Equally, what we've seen is a transition for companies primarily focusing on the UK markets to companies now exporting engineering companies, Irish engineering companies supporting and exporting all around the world. So Combi up in Monaghan exporting to multiple their forklift trucks to markets all around the globe. And what we've seen in that is those companies competing successfully, if you like, cut their teeth in terms of the near market, the UK market, but have gone global. And that's true of a range of sectors. So we've put a lot of effort into trying to lessen their dependence on any one market. And as a result of that, as I said, is the exports to the UK have grown. They've grown substantially. Last year they grew by 12%. But they've grown faster in other markets, and that's been a conscious effort by Enterprise Ireland, working with those companies to help them to broaden their footprint and lessen their dependence upon any one market. But the UK, being our nearest neighbour and being English-speaking, is and will continue to be a very important market for Irish exporting companies. I think one of the switches we'll probably see in certain sectors, such, for instance, financial services, is we may see over the coming years that actually, rather than the UK being the first market, export market, they might look west, and that's part of one of the things that we're doing with companies now is with some of those companies is helping them to look at other markets as their first export market, given the challenges in that particular sector, in that particular market. But we're not seeing, I wouldn't describe it as a panic on Brexit. What we are seeing is companies looking at what the situation is and responding to the situation as it evolves. And obviously the short-term situation on exchange rates is something that is immediate for them to deal with, and we're helping them to respond. And as I mentioned earlier on, companies that have exports into multiple markets are better positioned than companies that have an awful lot of their export eggs in the UK market. So it's different for different companies and sectors. But we do see exports as part of our next 4-year plan. We do see exports to the UK growing as opposed to declining. It's just that we see, and we will be focused on trying to accelerate the growth in other markets at a faster pace. So the relative dependence on the UK will decline.
CETA?
Yes.
Just on CETA, our clients would welcome CETA. We saw growth in exports between 2014 and 2015 to Canada of 7%. We would hope to grow that. It's a location where there has always been an Enterprise Ireland office, but in terms of focus for our clients, it hasn't been a priority. We think this will open it up to it being a far greater priority. That's the immediate term in terms of client engagement with the market. I think in the short term, I think in the more medium term, what will be interesting is what opportunities will happen in terms of not only the European-Canadian trading relationship, but what happens with Britain, who have a traditional relationship trading with Canada, and would that open opportunities up for our clients as well. So what we're hearing from our clients is it's seen as positive.
I think Deputy Smith also referred to, to trade deals within the island, north and south.
That was a question more for yourself.
Yeah, firm led to believe the formal negotiations will be between the government, the UK and the European Union. But in terms of deals within the island or across the island, I suppose the only thing we can say is that we're encouraged that all parties, the British government, the Irish government and the government in Northern Ireland, have all made it their explicit aim to maintain as open a border as possible on this island.
And I think the final question was in relation to the quality of jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an organisation strategy that we launched last year, which in early 2015 highlighted our focus, and it is by the end of 2019 to a 900 investment, 80,000 new jobs, and to increase investments in regional locations by 30 to 40%. In 2015, we had the best performance of our history, and we created 187 jobs, and we won 213. We now have 187,000 jobs, FDI jobs in Ireland, and last year alone there were 213 investments approved. And the knock-on effect of that is quite interesting, in that about 20% of all private sector jobs are actually related to FDI. So that's the spin-off from FDI, which means therefore that both direct and indirect jobs as a result of FDI in Ireland is about 300,000. Your question with regard to IDA and the salaries, we do look at the salaries of companies coming through, of course. It's important. Indeed, companies do compare salaries with other locations around the globe, because what we are doing is competing for our investments. And last year, the average salary of our new investments was around €49,000. And about 74% of the jobs approved last year had salaries of greater than €35,000. So that gives you an indication of the kind of salaries and the kind of jobs that we are attracting and winning for Ireland.
I don't doubt that, and I did my sums on the figures that you gave of the amount of jobs and the wage of €9 billion a year that's paid, €9 billion a year that's paid out to 187,000 employees, so I don't doubt the average. What I did ask you, however, is do you do a check on the standard and type of jobs that these companies are bringing in? Now, I can mention the companies, but I know public money is given to them to fund them, and the type of jobs that they're promoting in our cities are pretty, I don't know, probably a return to 1913 rather than 21st century type jobs.
Well, as I said, they're the average salaries from the perspective of our clients.
I understand, I've acknowledged that. I'm not talking about the average salaries. Do you scrutinise companies that we fund and the type of job that they are bringing into the country? Do you scrutinise them?
We do look at the salaries, and we do see what they are, and the type of activities that they are bringing in, because clearly that's very important. We have to be able to show that we can get those type of employees for these companies as well when they are looking at locations around the globe. So that is something that we do, and overall our companies employ a good calibre of people, and in return they do pay good salaries.
Well, just maybe, Deputy, that if you would like to write or liaise with Ms Buckley privately, and that you can name the company that you're concerned about there, and she could liaise back to you.
I was going to name it here, but I know I couldn't be let. I'll certainly do that, and it's not just our company, there's several companies.
Well, if you want
multinationals that are getting tax breaks and our money to create bogus jobs, very badly paid bogus jobs with lousy conditions for workers.
Well, if you want to raise it, is that okay?
Certainly, we wouldn't be able to discuss the situation of any individual companies in this forum.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
but
certainly.
But the Deputy can raise it with you privately.
By all means.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, now, thank you for your patience.